One day, the sky sent a letter. It was February 2026. At the far edge of Antarctica, across a vast plateau sheathed in ice, the sun was sinking slowly toward the horizon. But before it could set, something strange happened. A dark shape began creeping across the face of the sun. It was the moon. It slid in front of our star like a coin placed over a lantern. Yet it was not quite large enough to cover the light completely. Around its edges, a blazing ring of gold bloomed into existence. A ring of fire, an annular solar eclipse. But this was only the opening act. Just 11 days later, the curtain rose on a different stage, the western sky after sunset, where 6 planets appeared together in a single graceful arc: Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter, strung across the heavens like jewels on an invisible thread. And 3 days after that, the moon drifted into the deepest shadow. Earth could cast and turn the color of blood. 3 celestial performances in a single month. A triple event so rare that astronomers struggle to recall the last time it happened. This is the story of how the sky put on its grandest show. The first chapter opens on February 17th in Antarctica. A solar eclipse begins with the simplest of setups. The moon passes between the Earth and the sun. When it covers the sun completely, we call it a total eclipse. But on this day, the moon had a disadvantage. It orbits our planet not in a perfect circle, but in a slightly squashed ellipse. Sometimes it swings closer, sometimes it drifts farther away. On February 17th, the moon sat near apogee, its farthest point from Earth. At that distance, its apparent size shrank just enough to be smaller than the sun. So when it crossed in front of our star, it could not blot out the entire disk. Instead, a thin ring of sunlight survived around the edges. That is an annular eclipse, and the ring it produces is called the annulus, Latin for little ring. The magnitude of this eclipse was 0.963, meaning the moon covered 96% of the solar surface. The remaining 4% blazed as a circle of golden fire. That ring held its shape for a maximum of 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Brief, yet the sight of a golden band hovering in the sky was enough to stop the breath of anyone fortunate enough to witness it. The path of annularity stretched 616 kilometers wide and 4,282 kilometers long, crossing only the remote ice of Antarctica. Here lay the catch: almost no one was there to see it. The path of annularity sliced through some of the most desolate ice on Earth. Only about 2% of the global population could observe, even a partial phase, and those viewers were limited to the southern tips of Africa and South America. Yet in the heart of the Antarctic plateau, at an altitude of 3,233 meters, stood Concordia Research Station, a joint outpost run by France and Italy. The handful of scientists wintering there claimed the finest seats on the planet. At 6:48 p.m. local time, the partial phase began. The light shifted in a way that felt almost dreamlike. Shadows sharpened, colors turned strange. At 7:47 p.m., annularity reached its peak. A crown of golden flame hung in the frigid polar sky for over 2 minutes. The entire event unfolded across roughly 2 hours. For everyone else, NASA and several observatories offered live streams, bringing the spectacle to screens around the world. One essential warning accompanied every broadcast: never look at the sun directly during any phase of a solar eclipse. Certified eclipse glasses or a simple pinhole projector, a small hole in cardboard that casts an image of the sun onto a flat surface, are the only safe options. 11 days after the ring of fire faded from Antarctic skies, an entirely different stage was set. On the evening of February 28th, about 30 minutes after sunset, anyone who turned toward the western horizon was greeted by an astonishing sight. 6 planets hung together in the sky, tracing a single gentle arc from low on the horizon to high overhead. Brilliant Venus anchored the display, with Mercury and Saturn clustered near the horizon below it, faint Neptune a bit farther along, Uranus higher, still and mighty Jupiter blazing near the top of the curve. This was a planet parade. The reason it happens lies in the architecture of our solar system. All the planets orbit the sun on roughly the same flat surface, called the ecliptic plane. Each world travels at a different speed and a different distance from the sun, yet occasionally from Earth's vantage point, several of them gather on the same side of the sky at the same time. They are not truly lined up in space billions of kilometers separate them, but viewed from our little rock, they appear strung along a single elegant curve. as if someone had threaded 6 gemstones onto an invisible wire. 4 of these planets, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter, were bright enough to see with the naked eye. Uranus and Neptune demanded binoculars for those who wanted to witness the parade. Firsthand, a few pieces of knowledge made all the difference. February 28 served as the benchmark date, but the optimal night shifted depending on location. Sao Paulo offered the best view on February 25th, New York and Tokyo peaked on February 28th, while London and Beijing favored March 1st. Seoul likewise found its sweet spot between late February and early March. The first secret was choosing the right place. A clear, unobstructed view of the western horizon was essential, since buildings or hills would swallow the lowest planets before they could be seen. The second secret was patience with timing. Observers needed to wait roughly 30 minutes after local sunset, allowing the sky to darken enough for the planets to emerge. The third secret was finding an anchor. Venus was the key, brighter than any star. It leapt out of the twilight immediately. Once Venus was located, scanning downward toward the horizon revealed Mercury and Saturn, while sweeping upward led to the unmistakable glow of Jupiter. Neptune and Uranus, invisible to the unaided eye, required binoculars or a small telescope. NASA noted that planets needed to sit at least 10 degrees above the horizon for comfortable viewing, because the thick lower atmosphere scatters and absorbs light from objects hugging the skyline. Before the wonder of the planet parade could fully settle, the third and final act arrived just 3 days later. On the night of March 3rd, a full moon climbed into the sky. At first, it looked perfectly ordinary. Then gradually, a shadow began to nibble at one edge. Earth's enormous silhouette was advancing across the lunar surface. The partial phase deepened, and at last the moon slipped entirely into the umbra, the darkest core of our planet's shadow. It did not vanish. Instead, it turned red. A blood moon. The physics behind the color is elegant. When sunlight passes through Earth's atmosphere, shorter blue wavelengths scatter in every direction, which is the same reason our daytime sky is blue. But longer red wavelengths bend through the atmosphere and curve around the planet, reaching the moon even inside the shadow. The result is a moon bathed not in darkness, but in a deep coppery crimson. Totality lasted roughly 58 minutes, while the full sequence, from first penumbral contact to last, stretched 5 hours and 39 minutes. The eclipse was visible across Asia, Australia, the Pacific Islands, and the Americas. In South Korea, the western sky before dawn became the theater. This was the last total lunar eclipse visible from North America until 2028, a 2-year wait for anyone who missed it. In 185 BC, a scribe in ancient Babylon pressed a stylus into wet clay and recorded a remarkable sight: 5 planets appearing in the sky at once. It is the earliest known account of a planetary alignment in human history. The ancient Greeks called an eclipse eclipsis, meaning abandonment, as though the sun had deserted the world. In China, people believed a celestial dragon was devouring the sun, and they beat drums and gongs to frighten the beast away. For thousands of years, humanity greeted these events with a mixture of terror and awe. Today, we understand the ecliptic plane, orbital mechanics, and the geometry of umbras and penumbras. Yet something curious happens the deeper that understanding goes. The wonder does not shrink, it grows. Planets separated by billions of kilometers happen to gather along the same arc. The apparent sizes of the moon and the sun align so precisely that a ring of fire can exist at all. Earth's own shadow paints the moon red. All of this unfolded within a single month. February 2026 was that kind of month. Keep eclipse glasses and binoculars within reach. The next time the sky sends a letter, be ready to read it. The story is far from over. Next, we meet a lonely world drifting through the Milky Way. Without a star, the rogue planet. Subscribe and turn on notifications. That is the first step toward the next chapter.